Ready? Ready on that side? Okay. Good evening. I'd like to call the meeting of the Athol Royalston Regional School Committee to order. Our first order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We'll begin with the approval of minutes from November 20th. Is there a second? Second. Any discussion on the minutes, omissions, etc.? Seeing none, all those in favor? Okay, what we're going to do this evening is just move a couple of things around in the interest of time and out of respect for the fact that we do have students here who would probably like to go home. We'll start with the student representative report.
November 25th to November 27th Spirit Week activities took place with different themes each day. The highlight of Spirit Week events included the annual lip sync contest. All 4 classes put together 15-minute performances. It was a hotly contested competition, with the sophomores edging out the seniors for first place. The seniors, however, prevailed with total points earned throughout all the events to win Spirit Week. November 26th, Superintendent Fernandez conducted student focus groups with the freshman class. Thanksgiving break was extended by 2 days due to the winter storm, with classes resuming on Wednesday, December 4th. After receiving student and staff feedback, an adjustment to the schedule occurred beginning on December 4th, as the school brought back a 35-minute intervention period that occurs on Monday through Thursday. On December 5th, thanks to the Aspiring Athol campaign, we had an all-school assembly that included the 7th and 8th graders. Strongman Eric Moss provided an entertaining and inspiring talk on perseverance. On December 5th, senior Colby Saltizic was recognized by Superintendent Fernandez as our school's recipient of the Franklin County Superintendent's Award. On December 10th, a start with Hello Assembly was held to promote positive peer interactions throughout the school community. The presenter from the Sandy Hook Promise campaign talked to all the students and staff about the 3 steps each one of us can take to build a positive culture throughout the school. On December 11th, there was a half day of school for teacher professional development. Before the end of the day, and as part of our Attendance Matters campaign, the school held a brief assembly to recognize the 40 students that have not missed a day of school and have less than 2 tardies. On December 14th, the athletic department hosted an all-day 15-school wrestling tournament. Our team finished exactly in the middle in 8th place. And finally, today completed the 2nd round of NWEA testing for all 9th and 10th students in math and ELS.
Thank you. We'll move to recognition and then we'll jump back up to public input. Recognition, school committee. Carla.
Nothing here.
Mitch.
Nothing specific, but I do want to just extend extra congratulations to Colby Saltizic. That's a great honor.
You? John. Nancy?
Yes. I would like to recognize the efforts of the staff, the parents, and the collaboration of people at the Royalston Community School for all the work that they've been doing to try and bring things back together over what was a rocky start due to some personnel and organizational challenges. When people get sick in a small school and some of the critical people are out of work, so to speak, things can tend to get a little rocky, and it certainly did at the beginning of the year this year. What I saw was very positive. I saw a lot of people come together from the community to try and shore things up. There was response from the superintendent's office, The Catherine Clark was very helpful. Cynthia Kennedy, our new principal there, was gathering a lot of new stuff together and did a great job with that. People like Mrs. Wilhite from the staff and so on did a great job in working. I think we're a long way to fixing things over there. We're not all the way, but I want to thank Superintendent Hernandez for her efforts and the staff and everybody.
Thank you. Student of the month, ACES. I know you're here someplace.
I am.
Okay.
Two teachers who are actually going to present their nominees.
Okay.
Tracy Johnson from the upper elementary for Marshall Jones. And Maya Hamilton. Come on up. From Mrs. Patrickman's class for the early childhood side. So this is when you get to listen to the wonderful things your teachers wrote to me about you. So we'll start with Maya. And Marshall, and I'll step over you. All right. So I nominated Maya for a number of reasons. She epitomizes our school motto, which is be kind, be safe, be responsible, day in and day out. She is always showing everybody in the class and in the school what it looks like to be on task, to be working hard, to be trying her best. And that's going to definitely take her places in this world. And it's such a wonderful role model to have in the classroom. But the biggest reason that I decided to nominate Maya is because of her kindness. She always notices when somebody needs a friend to play with or someone to work with, and she includes them. Like it's the, come on over and you're nuts, or you could play with us, and you can just see that that makes the other child feel so wanted, and it's such a great feeling, and it's wonderful to see. So that is the stuff that changes the world, kids, and that's why I nominated Maya. I nominated Marshall Jones as Student of the Month. Marshall is a student who always strives to do his best work in my class. He recognizes struggling as a challenge, and he embraces new ways to problem solve. He's a student who reminds me that it's a privilege to witness the growth and the learning of my students, and that I'm the lucky educator to have had him placed in my classroom. I hope you always love learning as much as you do now. Congratulations.
Thank you. RCS.
Claire and Aiden. There you are.
So when we had our Student of the Month notice go out to our staff, a couple of our kitchen folks came forward and they said, can we nominate Aiden and Claire because they exemplify the respectful, cooperative, and safe motto of RCS. And these are some of the things that they said. Some of the reasons Claire and Aiden were chosen were for their impeccable manners, something every parent likes to hear, right? The RCS spirit, as I mentioned, and their ability to be role models all around the school. And so we're very proud of you, Claire, very proud of you, Aiden. Thank you very much for all that you do to help out RCS to be a positive place every day. So take your hand. Congratulations.
Thank you. Arms?
Thank you. The Arms Student of the Month, nominated by grade math teacher Becky Thibault, is Ray Castine. She says that he's a very hard worker who stays focused on his work. He's one of the highest achievers in math for his grade and is a valued member of the basketball against Narragansett because he wasn't feeling well. So Ray Castine for Arms Student of the Month.
Athol High School.
Skylie can come up. So as a sophomore at Athol High School, Skylie challenges herself to be the best possible student and peer that she can be. She currently is taking 5 honors level courses, 3 of which are typically only offered to juniors. She currently is ranked number 1 in her class with a 4.1 GPA. In the words of her teacher, Mr. James Wheeler, Skylie exemplifies what pride is here at Athol High School. She comes to school every day ready to learn and consistently works to contribute to the learning environment. In and out of the classroom, she is a student who cares about learning and the well-being of others. When I had an opportunity to interview Kylie the other day, just to get a sense of her mindset and her determination, I was truly overwhelmed. She talks about her future goals. Truly a student that's determined. She wishes to attend the United States Military Academy at West Point, become a doctor within the military, and after completing her service, return to the Boston area to become a doctor and work with burn victims. This should go without saying, but we are happy and proud to have Skylie Ambrose as a member of our school community.
Thank you. And finally, staff member of the month. Who has it? Yeah, that's not. Okay. Yeah, no, I don't think Dan's here.
Where is Mrs. Basso? Oh, there she is. So at RCS, we recently started a new award for staff members to nominate each other and recognize each other, and it's called our RCS Rockin' Raccoon Award. And so Mrs. Katie Blake, our 3rd grade teacher, nominated Mrs. Basso, and I'd like to just read what the eloquent words that Mrs. Blake wrote about Mrs. Basso. Every morning, we, the students and staff, are greeted by Mrs. Basso's smiling face and voice, welcoming us to a new beginning. She emanates positivity and inclusiveness. No matter how little coffee you've had, you cannot help but perk up and smile a little when you hear that first, "Good morning, RCS. Are you ready for another great day?" But she doesn't stop there. Throughout the day, Mrs. Basso shines on no matter what is thrown her way. In addition to superbly managing her main duties without a curl falling out of place, she also serves as the backup, you name it. Safekeeper of all things valuable to little ones, school mom for her real kids, RCS kids, and yes, to some teachers as well. She's the go-to person for nearly everything and anything, never letting us RCS down. She's unflappable. You could tell her you have an annoying hangnail and she'd be like, "Oh, let me take care of that pain for you." Her enthusiasm and love for RCS carries us through the day and sends us out the door with a smile. Her 2:55 departing cheer is as positive and uplifting as her morning greeting. She recognizes the reality of tough days, but always with a celebratory tone as she proclaims, "We made it through, RCS." Her appreciation of others and thoughtful reminders to staff and students does not go unnoticed. Thank you, Mrs. Basso, for setting the tone and reminding us, I'm just quiet a little bit, reminding us all to laugh a little more and not to take ourselves too seriously. Congratulations.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move back up to public comment, public input rather. Mary Grutchfield is signed up on the agenda under negotiations. So Mary, the floor is yours.
We, the undersigned members of the Athol Teachers Association, are frustrated and disappointed with the lack of progress in achieving a fair and equitable contract for our members. All units of the ATA are working in unity to reach our goals. The teachers, the custodians, the paraprofessionals, and the administrative assistants. We are seeking a fair cost of living increase for all. Whether you are a custodian, a paraprofessional, an administrative assistant, or a teacher, your milk costs the same. We all deserve raises to meet the rising cost of living. Just cause language for all. No one expects to be guaranteed a job for life. All we are asking is that the district agree to just cause provisions, as are prevalent through the Commonwealth. Just cause simply establishes due process in disciplinary and termination procedures. Fair pay for increased work. The district is seeking to require teachers to commit longer hours for no additional pay. This is unjust. We strongly urge the Athol Royalston School Committee to address our concerns and offer us a fair contract now. Educator working conditions are student learning conditions. Treating your staff right will lead to a more stable public school system in our communities in the future.
Thank you. Mary, do you have anybody? Mary, does anybody else from your group? Okay, thank you. As our policy and procedures state, when you go under public input, there is not interaction or comment from the committee this evening, but we will certainly take everything under advisement. I'll make sure the committee gets copies of your documents, and then we'll move on from there.
Thank you.
Okay? Okay. There was no other public input, so we'll move forward on the agenda. Unfinished business. Superintendent's evaluation process.
So as you know, the state of Massachusetts has, based on the recommendations from the Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents, made some alterations to the process for evaluation. So what I've tried to do is everybody should have this packet as part of the extra items. So if you want to pull that out, I'll take you through and explain to you what we've done and what the next steps should be. In the document on the first page, the first step is a self-assessment. At the last school committee meeting, or the school committee meeting before, I gave you my self-assessment and my goals. The next step is analysis of goals and plan development. So what I have done is I gave the committee my goals. At the last meeting, you did approve them, so that is done. But the next part in the new evaluation system is really for us to select the indicators that I will be evaluated on, and the state recommends that I make my recommendation based off of the goals that I've set. So what I am going to do tonight is let you know which ones I believe I should be evaluated on based on how I see them connected to the goals. At the end of the day, it is the decision of the school committee. As far as those are concerned, the state recommends 6 to 8 indicators be selected, and that at minimum 1 from each of the categories. Okay? So what I did in your packet is on the second page is the goals that I gave you and approved. Just in case you didn't have them with you, you have them here. And then if you look at those pages afterwards, what I've done is put down the indicators in each segment. And as I said, each segment, I am supposed to have a minimum of 1 of those items there. As you can see in my goals, 2 of my goals are directly related to curriculum and instruction. So the first goal talks about us increasing math scores. Second one talks about us increasing overall English scores. And the third one talks about us increasing learning walk data at the secondary level. So when you look at this first indicator, I have selected 3 items that I think would be appropriate in alignment with that. So the first one is curriculum, because one of our main strategies is ensuring that we have curriculum for teachers that aligns here in order for us to have success. The second one is about instruction and working towards ensuring that everybody has the same high expectations for instruction through our learning walk process. And the third one has been one of our major areas that we've been working on, which is data decision-making process. And if you look at our strategic plan, these items are embedded in our strategic plan as well. So that's my recommendation for the first section. So 1A, 1B, and 1E. The next recommendation for the next page, I am looking at is fiscal management systems. So this next category, the reason why I put down fiscal management systems is one of the things we talked about or have been talking about is in order for us to have success, we have to be able to reconfigure our fiscal management system towards the areas of concern, which I have been doing since I've been here as superintendent and will continue to do. It is one of our major strategies for support. So 2E for the second section. For the third section, based on the evaluations that I have received from the school committee, I want to work on two things which I talked about. One is more engagement with families. If you notice in my professional practice goal, that's what I am focusing my attention on. And the second is shared responsibility and collaboration with families. And if you notice, that is one of the major areas under my professional practice goal. The third one, or the last one, is on commitment to high standards, fosters and shares commitment to high standards of service, teaching, and learning with high expectations for achievement for all. And again, three of my indicators are that you've approved of my goals are focused in on student achievement. So I think for me, that's what I am recommending. At the end of the day, it's the school committee's decision as to what those should be. And the state law does say or recommends that they should align with the goals. So I put that forward to the school committee for discussion at this time.
Anybody? Anybody got any questions? You don't certainly have to have a vote tonight or whatever, right? I mean,
It's up to the school committee.
because I mean, they may want to read this.
Well, I did give you all copies of this last time. This is just a reiteration of that at the last meeting. All of these were given.
Which were the indicators? I had 2E, what was the other indicator? Page 5 of 7? That's the only one?
That's the only one in that area.
Right.
And the state recommends a minimum of one in each,
Right,
but there are
yeah.
multiples in others. So it's up to the school committee, but the next step would be for people to give me my midterm evaluation, and we are almost at the midterm. So my concern and worry is it is now December. We have not made a decision on this, and in order for me to get a midterm evaluation from the school committee, decisions need to be made. So I just put that forth because the midterm would be about January, and it's now December 18th.
Chuck?
The alignment of these goals seems appropriate, and we're also facing obviously a time factor here. I might suggest that we move forward with accepting these, so that we have an ability to do that midterm evaluation.
Ken?
Under professional culture, which ones did you,
Is that number 4?
yes, on page 7 of 7?
7 of 7, engagement and shared responsibility. Oh, no, that's, I'm sorry. The next one is commitment to high standards.
Did you consider the last one, 4F?
4F, employees' strategies in responding to disagreement and dissent constructively, resolving conflict and building consensus throughout the district or school community. That's fine. I don't have a problem with it. If you'd like me to add that, I am currently at, they say no more than 8. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That would bring me to 8. So we could add that on.
It would be of interest to me that it's,
Yep, I don't have a problem with it, it's really up to the
I
school
don't
committee.
know what the rest of the community is.
I think it's important.
Carla?
Yeah. I was looking at continuous learning, which is connected to commitment to high standards. They're two aspects of the same thing, but as a matter of culture, I would think the culture of continuous learning is very important. But again, if there's only one, we can only add one indicator to this list.
Oh, you can't. You can alter the ones that I've recommended.
Yeah.
I'm just recommending, I looked through what I had put down for goals and then pick the ones that I thought were most appropriate based on the goals the school committee had approved.
Is there discussion or a motion? Either way.
I'll make a motion to accept the number 4 F.
Motion made and seconded, as submitted with the addition of 4F. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Okay. Thank you.
I think you had
Oh,
somebody who made
sorry.
that order.
Against? Okay. Yep.
Okay. So we are.
I will meet with the superintendent, and we'll just put a plan together, just so we know the process, and then we'll, discuss if we can probably hand this out and move forward and, get your midterms done in January. Okay?
Thank you.
Welcome.
Lee,
Yep.
can you clarify for us what our next steps are between now and the January meeting? What are we supposed to be doing here?
I'll meet with the superintendent, discuss the process, then I'll notify the committee. It won't deviate from the process that Deb submitted to us. I mean, it'll still be that same process. But I'll meet with her just to discuss everything, and then I'll get this document out to you. And we'll try to get it back, so that we can do it in a timely fashion. It's basically just another, but it's a midterm cycle.
Yeah, right.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. New business. This evening, ACES Media Center dedication. I spoke with the principal. I spoke with the superintendent. I mentioned to the town manager, and I also mentioned to the family that I think it's appropriate that the ACES Library and Media Center be dedicated in memory of Karen McNiff. She was the building chair for that entire project. She was staunchly integrated into the library media center up there. She wanted to make sure that it was a functioning library, and I think that it's an appropriate testament to Karen for her service on the building committee, and I would entertain a motion or comments. Any discussion? Seeing none, just so you know, I have confirmed with the family. We'll plan on some sort of a dedication process, maybe in later January or early February. All those in favor? Opposed? Nobody? Unanimous? Thank you. SEL update, assemblies and classroom teaching.
Catherine Clark will present.
So in your packet, you have a brief one-page, no presentation, summary of what's going on in SEL so far this year. I have to say that this is a team effort, the whole guidance team, investment counselors helped out with this, but primarily Amanda Peterine is really behind most of this beautiful presentation. We have broken out for you every month what has been taught in the classes and in sessions with the guidance counselors and the teachers. And I think I'm just going to go into that a little bit with the plan about how that's working in the classrooms. But October was Bullying Prevention Month, and it is every year. So the primary topic that month was bullying, anti-bullying. In November was self-awareness, which is one of the 5 capital competencies that students need to build in order to have social-emotional skills. December was self-management. January is responsible decision-making. February and March will be the other 2 competencies, which are relationship building, and I can't remember the other one, Amanda. I should know it, but I don't remember off the top of my head. The elementary schools focus on character traits, and so right now they've focused so far on being responsible, respectful, the character trait for having gratitude and compassion. Ongoing, the guidance and adjustment counselors are piloting curricula to see if there are things that we have a grant this year that we can use by curricula, so we're piloting different curricula. We'll get together right after break to talk more about what we think we should, if anything, be purchasing. School-wide expectations and PBIS expectations are being taught explicitly at the schools. We're having assemblies and conversations around expectations, and you see a lot of visuals around. There's flyers that go home for parents. They go home in backpacks, just to make sure that everybody gets them, around what's happening around SEL from the different schools. We are part of a cohort of 8 schools across the state who were chosen this year to participate in what's called the SEL network, and so we get to go to Devon's 4 times this year with other districts and see what they're doing. We've learned a lot already. We've had 2 of those meetings, and we have an SEL team made up of teachers and administrators and guidance folk who go to these presentations. And so far, as I said, we've learned a lot. They've also supported us through webinars and phone conversations as well. Related events and assemblies, there was a Unity Day assembly. There always is in October. There's a day in October everyone has to wear orange, and it's Unity Day. And I gave you a little visual also that it's a colorful little. I took a picture today at ACES because it was considered a bullying club, but it was just so cute that I wanted to. I was there at a walkthrough, and actually Amy took the picture for me and sent it over to me. There was a Unity Day family event. We've had the AG's office, the Attorney General's office, has given us some access to some assemblies. The first one was Start with Hello, which you heard from the young man who presented that 7th through 12th graders participated in that assembly. And it's all about kind of how to be friendly and how to reach out to people that you think might be isolated. There have been ongoing recognitions of student achievement for attendance. We have our attendant guidance, our attendance heroes at the elementary level, and then the high school, as the young man mentioned also, they were doing perfect attendance and things like that. The family, student, and staff surveys are completed at ACES, the high school, and ARMS. They will be completed at RCS, and that data will be presented, will be rolled into the principal data meeting in January. 2 events that happened that folks brought up to me, but we were not responsible for, so I didn't write them on here because we couldn't take responsibility. But the Aspire Athol presentation was a strong man, as this young man mentioned. It was very much about resilience and some of those things that we're teaching in the social and emotional learning competencies. And there was a cultural exchange of family at ACES wanted to share about their culture, so they had an assembly around that. So that's what's going on right now. And I know in terms of the structure, teachers are taught and meet with guidance 1 to 2 times a week, depending on the school and their schedule. And then the children get explicit instruction once a week at every school. The elementary level is done by the guidance staff, and at the high school and the middle school, it's done by the teachers during advisory time. So, any questions about social emotional learning?
Okay, thank you very much. Under new business also, Athol Royalston SEPAC.
Remember to introduce myself. Okay, so I'm Megan Cody, the Athol Royalston SEPAC chair. Pretty much all know me. This is one of our new co-chairs.
Co-chairs.
Okay. So tonight we wanted to bring forward and advise the committee on concerns that have been brought forward to the Athol Royalston SEPAC. But before we dive right into that, well, this is kind of part of it. So parents have expressed deeply rooted concerns about their children's inability and their inability to create meaningful bonds with staff because of the rapid turnover. So as CPAC, you know, we have the right to be consulted in decisions that involve us, which is, so from our fundamental CPAC Bill of Rights, CPAC is charged with advising and educating the district and the community. And in order to be effective, the district must seek the input and participation of the CPAC. District policies, procedures, and hiring decisions that directly affect special education students and their families should always be discussed with collaboration in mind. And I think we have, for running tally, 65 staff turnover since 2017. And we did want to recognize and appreciate that there is a new retention and recoupment plan put up there, but we have reservations about that because we don't feel that SEPAC has been granted the voice at the table to, be a voice of reason and try to collaborate together to help with this. But we did notice that school councils are in there and parents and teachers and even PTOs, but we would like to have that seat at the table as well. So, I'll move forward to the concerns. As the state mandated Special Education Parent Advisory Council for the Athol Royalston Regional School District, we are in receipt of a plethora of systemic concerns from parents and guardians in unison with our own observations. So we've crafted a partial list of systemic concerns, which include but are not limited to, we had reports of improper use of IEP amendments, improper removal of children on Section 504 plans and IEPs, and placing them on DCAPs, which are district curriculum accommodation plans, but they don't provide the federal protections that our children with disabilities are entitled to. Non-compliance with IEP timelines pursuant to, including but not limited to 603 CMR 28.05 Section 7. An example, the 14 calendar day timeline for parents and guardians to receive the proposed IEP in writing. Improper use of exclusionary timeouts, conflicting IEPs. The district contact on 504 plans at some schools is left completely blank on Section 504 plans, so it's hard to know who do they contact. Who do I go to if I have a problem? So there is improper use and depiction of push-in and pull-out services. So it would be conflicting. So if you have OT in a service grid, that's a pull-out under C. Then you have an additional info that is a push-in with a different time frame. So that's conflicting. And we consulted the Federation for that, and it needs to be placed under B and C for that, for example. Parents and guardians report difficulties in accessing and understanding their children's rights in unison with their parental rights upon reviewing district policies on the website. Our district website is not in compliance with ADA standards and is not user-friendly. So a good portion of our policies within this district are outdated and or not in compliance with current state and federal laws. So for example, we pulled out 2 that we wanted to bring up. And that would be, so one of them would be our restraint policy. So for example, our current restraint policy allows for chemical and mechanical restraint of our children. However, under 603 CMR 46.03 Section 1A, it states, prohibition. Mechanical restraint, medication restraint, and seclusion shall be prohibited in public education programs. But our policy, it's JKAA, physical restraint of students. And I quoted part of it, and it was, the use of mechanical or chemical restraint is prohibited unless explicitly authorized by a physician and approved in writing by the parent or guardian. The use of seclusion restraint is prohibited in public education programs. Chemical restraint is the administration of medication for the purpose of restraint. And the third reading on that was June 18th, 2014 for our district. And I believe the Board of Education updated in 2016, I think it was December, and then I think it went into effect in 2018. So we need to bring that up to speed. So we advise that restraints should be ceased immediately and without delay until that is updated to be in compliance with state law. So, and then we also have the physician's affirmation form for home hospital tutoring pursuant to 603 CMR 28.03. Ours is really outdated. We need to go in and fix that because I believe we have to wait. It has to be 14 consecutive days, and they changed it where it's 14 days. It could be a combination of both, and you don't have to wait to hit those 14 days to get the tutoring.
Megan, which policy is that?
I didn't write the number 1 down on that.
Right.
I was getting to it. So as a result of the previously stated systemic concerns, we hereby propose that the CPAC and the district collaborate in a meaningful way to develop policies, procedures, protocols, and processes that are clearly defined in a manner which they are easily understood by all. In addition, we propose an audit of the special education department and programs in direct relation to, including but not limited to, compliance of all applicable laws pertaining to special education, processes, procedures, and policies, like the writing of IEPs and Section 504 plans. And this would be, we're proposing it to be conducted by an external third-party consultant. And for that part, we would request advisement from Attorney Dupier on this matter, and that if, it is something you're willing to do, that CPAC would have a seat at that table and be part of a search committee to try to find someone, if that makes sense. We just really want to make it clear, in the most clear and concise manner, that at this point, our children are experiencing trauma. They are frustrated, they are stressed out, and they're suffering. And our parents and our guardians cannot take any more. And I don't think that our educators can either. And I just want to state that we must do better for our children, because they are our future generations, and there is no excuse for this. I'm done.
Fred, you asked for his.
Yeah, I wanted to see
Do you
Fred's
have an
advisement on
opinion
that.
of the audit process, or, is that something the committee can decide or take it under advisement?
Yeah,
or
so
how do you?
I have had audits done in other school districts. There was someone in particular who I thought was really exceptional. His name was Gordon Parker, or is Gordon Parker. He's retired. I don't know if he even does it anymore, but he was exceptional in performing these type of audits. I used him in a few different locations and DSEA trials. And just to give you an example, I had one school district where Desi said that the only school district that was worse than them was Fall River. And after he came in and worked for the school district, Desi came back in again and found no deficiencies. So he's probably the best person I ever worked with as far as doing an audit. There are other individuals that work with special education to develop processes and procedures, very similar to what Megan was identifying. It's not inexpensive. And of course, the school district and administration would need to determine that it's advisable and necessary. So I think that it's an item that would probably need to be potentially on a future agenda. And I could have conversations with the Special Education Department, Darcy, and Lee prior to the next school committee meeting where that can be discussed. I have one school system where they brought in someone to do an audit and to assist the special education department. One of the problems is there's very few people that do it, and so it's actually difficult to locate someone that has expertise and doesn't cost too much.
Carla, then Chuck.
You mentioned a district that you were familiar with that Desi had previously evaluated their SPED department and then came back and said, we fixed it all and it's fine. Has Desi ever had an occasion to evaluate or issue an opinion on our SPED department?
I have no idea.
Yes. We get, I think it's every 5 years they come in and they evaluate our special ed department. Kate, when was the last time we had it done?
The year before I started, and it was called the Coordinated Program Review,
Right.
and so they issued, corrective actions, things that needed to be changed. Those were changed and updated with various things in the report. And now they've gone to a system where they're breaking it down. We're actually in
Yep, and just so you know, if we're found out of compliance, the state then requires that we report back within a year if we are out of compliance. I am sure we will be happy to present that report to the school committee, so you are aware, but it is a steady process in which we do follow. I'm sure Kate can put something together for the next meeting to help inform the school committee of the next steps.
Chuck.
I think Megan was brought forward here, certainly requested dialogue does certainly, benefit from dialogue here. There are a number of issues here that it sounds like we need to sit down with the state or superintendent on and see what kind of things are workable. If there's a trust issue or whatever, perhaps we look into someone independent.
We've tried. That part, what you're saying, we have to wait for Attorney Dupere to facilitate in order for us to be allowed to meet with school district personnel. That's why we're here at the committee, because how else are we going to advise?
We were advised not to speak with anybody in the school.
And without a facilitated.
Yes.
Ms. Fernandez.
Yeah.
That is
In an
incorrect.
email. Yeah.
And
That
I
is
believe
incorrect.
Leslie,
Yeah.
our Mass PAC director, requested to see if she was still interested. I don't know if you had spoken more with her on that.
No, that is not what happened. What I talked about is the executive meetings with Kate Clark, that there be someone present, because there seems to be a problem. Every time we have a meeting, there's the view of the CPAC and there's a view of the school department, and they were not merging together. And so my recommendation was a third party be present. That had nothing to do with meeting with me. I have received not one item this year from the CPAC requesting to meet with me this year.
Yes, we would advise the school committee and the special education department. We could come to you,
But the point I'm trying to make is no one's come to me. I want to make it clear that the executive meetings with Kate Clark, my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, Kate, have they been scheduled for this year?
Yep.
When were they finally scheduled?
The first one's February.
The first one, so they have not even met with the special ed director yet in which to have conversations and discuss any of these matters. They hadn't put the schedule together till just recently.
Yeah, so I would be present for those particular meetings. I'm scheduled to assist in those discussions and review this type of issue. Megan spoke briefly to me about the fact that, the first meeting would be in February. I told her that potentially I would have time in January for that type of meeting as well. I wasn't in the office all day. I was in the city of Pittsfield, so I wasn't able to contact you, but I do have my schedule booked. And if there was an opportunity to do something.
Yeah, we were going to try to find an earlier date, right?
Yeah. So that's something that I could discuss with the two of you and Kate. You'd coordinate that, right, Kate? And, I could step away from the table for a minute with Kate while the school committee continues with their agenda, and we could talk about that. But
Okay.
Some of the issues we raised could be actually discussed in that context. And then we can examine the issues and see, one, if there is an issue, and two, if there is, how to resolve it.
Good, that sounds good. Thanks, Brad.
Okay.
So why don't I come over here with
Okay.
the two of you and Kate?
Are we good?
If
Yep.
that's
Okay.
Thank you.
acceptable to the school.
Yep. Works for me.
And I shall return.
Moving forward, in communications, there is the enrollment sheet that you get on a monthly basis. And moving on to financial statements.
Can I just say one thing about the enrollment sheet?
Sure.
Sorry.
No, that's
I
fine.
just want people to notice the enrollment in Royalston has gone up as well. We have usually run about 120, 125. We are now up to 141. So I want to keep that in mind as well. So we are cusping in a lot of places with no seats.
Tammy, yep.
With the anticipation of the freshman class going into the high school, what is our plan? We're almost there, we're almost in January, and what is the anticipation of the enrollment out of the district to, say, Monty Tech? And what is the class size do you think we could anticipate for the freshmen
Right now, we're anticipating about 100 students. If you look at the high school, we are in a situation where we're running class sizes around 14 to 16 students. So we have room with the number of staff there with no problem. That is not an issue. Our issue is really at the elementary and middle school level.
And then the second grade was my only other comment.
Yes. Just so you know, we had a long conversation with the principal at ACES in regards to second grade. And so we gave them, the principal actually requested to have paras in the classroom instead of opening up another class because she felt that would be more helpful to the classroom teachers. So we moved with that rather than adding an additional teacher. So right now, in every second grade classroom, besides a classroom teacher, there is a para. So that helps with the ratio.
And that will go to third grade with them?
Depending on, we are in the process of looking at budget. It has to do with budget and what the school committee and the town agree upon as far as our budget is concerned. We are asking for level funding, so those paras are included in those numbers. Whether we can get level funding is a question. I know tonight Lynn is going to give you a small overview of what's going on. One of our dilemmas or issues right now is the Student Opportunity Act for the state has been voted in, but we have not been given any figures. And so we're waiting to figure out what those figures are in order to make a determination as to what we move forward with. So Lynn and I are a little frustrated because we don't have those numbers to really give a good overview as to what we would need from the town in order to be able to level fund and in some cases add additional staff.
Darcy, I don't mean to jump on, I just clarify, we still have one open para position because we don't have a candidate.
Right, but,
So
yeah.
it's piecemeal right now, the intent is to get another one, but I don't want to mislead anyone.
Right.
It's still open, we just have
Thank
not
you.
had qualified
Yeah.
candidates come through that we can
Yeah.
fill.
So
Ideally, would you want to have another teacher next year, or would you prefer that para model?
I would want to get input from my staff. If we were looking at next year, that's a whole different scenario than to add in the middle of the year. We did that last year, and it creates, students make relationships with their peers and with their teachers.
No, I meant for next year.
Yeah.
What would be an ideal situation at ACES
More
next year?
teachers at every grade level would be the ideal. Yeah, you say no, absolutely, but I just wanted to clarify, we still had one open, so it's piecemeal right now with
And
the pairs.
I think the other piece too, you have to remember is we don't know what's coming in. So sometimes what can happen is if kindergarten comes in low, we can then shift an adult. We don't know that answer yet either. And so, but I will say to you, and Mrs. Cleveland and Mrs. Kennedy could speak to this, I don't think there's been a week gone by lately where somebody hasn't been registering in the schools. And so,
Today,
is that right?
2 today to come after the holiday.
Yeah, so we continue to grow.
Not grade 2.
Right. Did we answer your questions, Tim?
Thank you. Financial statements and approval of accounts.
Okay, expenditure report. Made a couple of notes, basically starting on page 4. If you recall, our fiscal 20 budget, we built our fiscal 20 budget, adding 2 salaries to school choice funding, meaning we didn't have it in our general fund, hoping that during the year of fiscal 20, we'd be able to save some money and some budget lines in order to get those staff back into the general fund. Because you want as much of your staffing in the general fund as possible. But in order to get our fiscal 20 voted in last year, we actually put 2 people in school choice. So I'm just indicating now, we're in December, and our budget, is looking fairly good. I've indicated some areas where we may be able to start thinking about squeezing maybe those school choice salaries back into the general fund before we actually finish up our fiscal 21 budget. So on page 4, we do have a retirement of the high school library salary, library person up there, librarian. And at this point, the principal has decided to replace that librarian with a library para. So that's what's up there now, though. So there'll be some, we expect there'll be some extra funding in that line. On page 8. Just, this is an extra funding. This was just an issue we need to deal with, and we will be discussing this with the facility manager we have some unanticipated expenses happening in the building budget that we need to have addressed. Because when we do have, obviously, some unanticipated building expenses that could be $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, that has to come from somewhere.
In order to have, so now that they have the proper equipment, we also need to be buying those specimens to go along with it, and that's why you're seeing that in the budget, and we need to continue to anticipate that moving forward.
Okay. Expenses that we're anticipating in the fiscal '21 budget. And this is just for your information, but basically our enrollments are going up. You're seeing that every month. I just compared, I looked at the enrollments back on November 2018, and I compared them to their enrollment sheet that we were given during last school committee, and we're up 91 students. Number 2, ELL students have increased to now require 2.5 staffing, ELL staffing. We currently have 1.5 ELL staffing. Anticipated fiscal '21 grant reductions. We spoke about this before. SRG will be one of the grants that will drop down to about $64,000 from, we started with that grant with close to $400,000 in that grant. It has slowly gone down, gone down, gone down. This will be our last year, as far as I know, Darcy. 64,000 will be done. We won't have the SRG grant again. And we want to retain those staff, so those will have to go back into the general fund. Adding 2 staff back into the general fund from school choice, as I explained to you before. If we can get them into this year's budget, that'll be great. Then we won't have to put them into next year's, but we want to keep them into this year's budget. Add supports at ARMS. One of the additions to the ARMS budget is going to be a dean of discipline. Reconfigure staff to support the largest population at ACES. So basically, ACES has 600 some odd kids. The high school has 300 some odd kids. So ACES needs a full-time PE person, not a .8 person. So we'll be reconfiguring. We'll be taking a .2. We'll be leaving a full-time PE person at ACES, and we'll be taking a .2 from the high school and send over to RCS. Curriculum increases for science, history, social. I'm sorry?
Mitch, sure.
Yep.
Question on the dean of discipline, is that to replace an assistant principal or in addition to it?
That's in addition, because when you look at the numbers currently, this is our second largest school in the district, and it is the only one. The elementary school has 2, an assistant principal and an early childhood director, and the high school has 2 deans. So this school, even though it's close, about 100 kids off from ACES, doesn't seem to have enough support. Same thing with the guidance office. You take a look at the guidance office here, they have 1 adjustment counselor, they have 1 guidance counselor. ACES has 2 adjustment counselors and a guidance counselor. The high school has 2 guidance counselors, an adjustment counselor, and a social worker. So this school, in our opinion, has not gotten the same number of supports for students that we've had in the other buildings, and that's why we're making the recommendation.
Just one point on that. I'm just wondering, and this is just a consideration, just in terms of the title, Dean of Discipline, which is an unusual one. I would usually expect to see Dean of Students, whose major job function was discipline, but also could be used in other areas. So I think that perhaps consideration of the title Dean of Students.
Right. It would be Dean of Students. It would not be Dean of Discipline. You know, Lynn filled this out, and she may not have known the official title for that, but it would be the same as the high school Dean of Students.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And just so everybody's aware, this is a first draft.
Right.
If any of the school committee members have concerns or anything, certainly as we move through the budget subcommittee process or speak to administration, because, I mean, the bottom line is going to be the bottom line. And in the end, we may not be able to do some of these things because we have to prioritize other areas. So I just want to make sure that, you know, you certainly have the right to input at either one of those venues.
Okay, and the last I've got on expenses is curriculum increases for the science, as we have in our goal is adding science curriculum, science and history and social studies. Currently, we've got about $129,000 in curriculum increases for those particular areas.
And under that, please know that since I've arrived, we've done a curriculum plan so that every year we're looking at a different set of curriculum. So we have finished English, we have now close to finishing science, we have finished mathematics, so social studies is next on the list. And please realize that a new set of social studies curriculum was adopted by the state last year. So remember, we can't keep the books of some of that curriculum if it's not there. So I'll give you an example. If you look in the back wall, that's some of the materials our teachers are currently using in social studies that, you know, additions from the 90s. We've got to look at it revising and supporting some of that curriculum. And so that's why that figure's so high, because we're trying to make sure everything is brought up to speed.
Just wanted to say that protocol that you've established for a regular curriculum review is very much appreciated. We talked about that for a long time. It's nice to see that's flowing smoothly.
Thank you.
Okay, in the revenue section, Darcy did explain a little bit about the new Student Opportunity Act, which we're hoping to see some more new revenues in. Student Opportunity Act actually spreads out and encompasses about 7 years. So sometimes the figures they're throwing out right now isn't for 1 year, it's spread over 7. So just keep that in mind as you're seeing things come out in the news or online or whatever it is. So obviously we're anticipating something, we just don't know exactly what at this point. But we're anticipating Chapter 70 funding. In this act, there's supposedly more Chapter 70 funding for low income and special education enrollment factors. There's more funding for regional transportation. There's more funding for circuit breaker. We have 30 out-of-district students now. They're providing some new special education transportation funding, which we just heard about the other day. And they're providing more funding for ELL students, which we're noticing our ELL student population is increasing. And they're expecting the DOR will be increasing the minimum contributions from the towns. So again, snapshot in time, this is what we do know. There's a lot we don't know. And you know, as the state starts pulling figures together, hopefully, especially with the Student Opportunity Act, we'd really like to know what we can expect from it. But right now, we just don't know.
Right. And what I would say in regards to this, and keep this in mind, we have put on here what the principals have requested because we wanted to make sure you knew what it was. And again, I think Lee has put forth a very good caution that it's for discussion. It isn't final. The other thing that I will say is without knowing what's going to happen with the Student Opportunities Act, it's hard for us to say right now what we recommend moving forward or not, because we don't necessarily have those figures in front of us. And to give you an overview right now of what this would look like in relationship to assessments would be inappropriate as well, because we don't have that information. And what we don't want to put out publicly is a panic button as to what it looks like without having that in place. So we're trying to hold off, hoping that we'll get that information soon.
Any questions, comments? Okay.
Will we give it back or no?
Oh, that will go with the budget stuff, yes.
The strategic plan update?
Yes. So what you should have received tonight is a document that looks like this. Basically, what I have done is, in trying to keep the school committee up to speed on our strategic plan, is I have given you, we have 3 goals in our strategic plan, and we have a set of activities that align with those goals underneath. So what I have done is given you a chart that gives you the goal. Each of the activities are in the first column. In the second column is the progress we've made, and in the third column is the actual things we need to do moving forward. So just like any plan, you constantly want to be looking at it, you constantly want to be saying, is this working, isn't it, and what do we need to do? So I give this to the committee as a document to read at the next meeting. Any questions that people have, they will be able to bring forward. So can you make sure that's added to our agenda for the next meeting, Cheryl? But I at least wanted to give it to you this time so you can read through it. I did spend some time tonight, earlier today with the academic subcommittee going over some of these. Please, if you have any questions, don't be afraid to give me a call in the interim, but I want to make sure people have time to read the document. I don't want to rush you through it tonight. So please read it, and at the next school committee meeting, we will answer any questions you have in regards to the document.
Okay. Under reports of the committee, the chair does not have a specific report. However, I'll segue right into budget and finance. I attended, along with Chuck was there, and also Bill Chasen, at the previous, most recent budget subcommittee where we were introduced to the document that you received tonight. One of the things for consideration tonight at the committee, the subcommittee voted to approve the use of $100,000 from school choice towards the purchase of the Chromebooks. So the budget subcommittee puts that forth, and I'm only giving that report because I filled in for Nancy that evening as the chair of the subcommittee. So again, the subcommittee approved unanimously the use of $100,000 from school choice funding to move forward with the Chromebook in this budget year.
That vote is on the back of that sheet.
Yep.
Thank you, Tim. You can read this.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you. I have nothing further under budget sub. Nancy, I don't know if you do or, okay. Facilities and buildings.
The facilities subcommittee met this evening. One item was to pay the monthly bill for the high school project, which is nearing the end. It should be completed by December 31st, but we're hopeful that it is. One other item that we discussed was something that was suggested a month or so ago by a school committee member, is that we have additional security, a light monitor when we are on a lockdown, whether it's a test, or hopefully it's just a test, to notify buses that might be arriving or parents that there's a light notification. We've had 3 estimates from 3 different companies, and we will be forwarding that information to the budget subcommittee for their review. We're looking at the high school to begin with, and then perhaps adding the elementary school and middle school later. And we've had positive results on the water testing for the Royalston Community School, which is good news for all of us, being that we've spent over $60,000 on that tank.
Yeah.
There's a DEP notification that will be put up online and will be put around at the school.
Okay. Ken, you all set?
I think so.
Question.
Mitch.
What do you mean by the monitor for lockdown? Can you?
Well, it's another security, additional security for the school. It's basically a light that would come on and shine. Should the high school be on a lockdown and the buses are arriving, you don't want the buses or parents to be dropping kids off, so there'd be an outside system for them to know, keep driving by. But it's not cheap.
Yeah.
Make a big flashy sign out front, do something.
Negotiations.
Negotiations, we are negotiating, obviously.
So that has to be addressed, and we'll be looking at that. Page 9. Yes. Okay.
Would it make more sense next year, since a lot of times when the budget's running over on unanticipated things, you're probably underprepared, obviously, for that happening? Should the budget show perhaps a higher number for next year, given the fact that we do, even though these are newer schools,
Yes.
they are aging like any other
Yes.
would age, so we might want to have higher lines there for a lot of these.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right, because it's in the high school and the middle school where we're seeing those happening. It's not ACES and RCS at this point. No, you're absolutely right, so we will build that into the fiscal 21, yes. And also, we have to remember, we have to keep a certain, balance in our maintenance budget, because DESE, now that they've given us MSBA funds to keep a new school, or new schools at this point, they don't want you to slash your maintenance budget. They want you to keep it relatively stable, knowing that you're going to keep those buildings up to par as they're new.
I have a question with the change of the librarian media at the high school to
Yes.
a para. Will that affect us in the future for high school accreditation?
I could speak to that. We are in a situation where we're planning on replacing that position. But for this year, one of our issues was ensuring we had more support for mathematics. So we decided, because he was trying to replace it with a para, so we can continue with that extra math support. But we're looking in other ways to make that happen, so that position will be replaced.
Okay, so it will be replaced, but not this year, is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I'll go on. Page 9, I think. Did I skip anything? Page 9. Page 9, again, with staff coming in and out, a lot of staff is changing, and we're still even hiring now, replacing people that are retired. I'm estimating that we may see upwards of maybe $75,000 in our medical insurance budget. So again, could be used to bring those salaries out of the school choice back into general fund. Again, just an estimate at this point. We won't be making any changes until probably January, February, but this is what I'm seeing in the budget right now. On page 9, under unemployment claims, based on the last few months of our unemployment claims, it looks like we may see, again, we may see a $30,000 excess in that budget line there. So again, my goal here is just looking at some of these budget lines and trying to squeeze those 2 people from school choice back into the general fund before we do our fiscal 21 budget. On page 10, in January, we should see new school choice figures, which were just reported in October, so we're hoping that those budgets there will come into line. And pending in this budget, at the time I did this budget, there was a couple things pending. RCS was still looking for a 3.5 hour per day support person, replacing the high school librarian with the library tech para, like I explained to you, and then replacing high school Latin. The Latin teacher resigned, and the high school has now put an online course in and has a classroom para in the Latin class. So those things are not in the budget yet. So again, this is where we are right now. The budget is tracking well.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep, Chuck.
next.
Are you done?
Nope, I'm done, yep.
Well, I have a question for you.
Okay.
We had talked briefly at one point about whether or not we are paying subs an adequate amount of money, and I was wondering what thought you've given that in regard to next year.
It's in negotiations, so we can't discuss it at this time.
Okay, so that's expenditures. Do we want to look at our revenue budget? Again, tracking well. Chapter 70 is coming in, transportation is coming in, and again, I think I mentioned last month, I'm hoping that transportation number is actually going to be higher. I'm estimating that the transportation number is going to be closer to 645 than 585, so that's good. That'll give us some revenues on that. That encumbrance you see there is the middle school heating system. The control board was damaged by that storm we had about a month or so ago, and actually fried the board. So we're manually running the system now. You don't notice that because custodians are doing that behind the scenes, but we do have a contractor coming in to fix that board for the $18,000 that's there. So that's why I noted that was there. We do have a $1,000 deductible, so we'll ended up paying $1,000 for that fix. Anything on revenues? Okay. I do not have any budget line transfers to vote at this time. We can look at grants. Grants Grants are still holding at 1,298,000.
1 billion?
I'm sorry, 1 million?
Oh, man, you are all gonna get what you want.
1 million at the end, 1,298,681. Yes, that would be great. Again, grants are tracking well. We're using them, as we're supposed to with the payroll, and PD is basically what we use a lot of our grants for. So those are rolling right along. And you should have the middle school student activity account memo from Tom Telecki. And that does require a vote annually. These student activities have to be voted. Three different areas. First, we have to vote what we want to keep in the checking account. There's been 15,000 in the school, the student activity checking account at the middle school, and the principal is recommending that they keep $15,000 in the checking account. So that would be a vote.
Is there a motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
The next vote would be to vote in the actual student activity accounts that they are using. And this list, I think there's, if I counted them up, there's 14 active accounts listed on the memo, and the principal is recommending that these active accounts be kept in for fiscal 20.
I'll move the accounts as recommended.
Second?
And the
Discussion?
third is if there's any inactive accounts to be closed. The principal has indicated that the class of 2022, which has a zero balance, is inactive and should be closed.
So moved.
Before we so move that one, we need to actually call for a vote on the one that we just skipped. There was a motion made and seconded to approve that. All in favor? Opposed? No. Okay. And Mitch made us. Yep. Thank you. Any discussion on that motion?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor? Okay.
Okay, so under other, we will just take a quick look at our draft version A memo. We have gone to the Athol FinCom and presented this memo. We presented it at Budget Sub, and tonight we will present it in this memo form. The fiscal 21 budget highlight goals. Does everybody has a sheet? It's a one sheet. At the top, it says fiscal 21 budget highlights. You got it? Okay. So the goals for fiscal 21: retaining current staffing, including grants. Add extra supports for level 4 school. Upgrade the addition of technology, 574 Chromebooks. Budget Sub will report on a recommendation that we discussed with them on that.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
No, not anymore. It's not the label they use for the state.
Okay, what do we use? It's a different label?
In need of support, just say in need of support.
In need of
at this
support? Okay. Good catch. In need of support. Okay, take that out. Yes. The technology, 574 Chromebooks.
Can you just stop there, Lynn,
Yes,
for a
I sure
second?
can.
I want to explain why the Chromebooks are so important. And if Ed is here, he may be able to chime in so that I get this right. But essentially, my understanding is when we bought the Chromebooks, normally it comes with a host of software that is licensed as part of it. Now, my understanding is Google will only extend it for so many years. Am I accurate? And so the problem is all of our purchases since, what, last year?
2016.
2016 will be considered out of date and we'll lose all of that support. And the cost it is for that software is more expensive than getting new Google Chromebooks, correct?
Getting the replacement Chromebooks will be based on the model of the Chromebooks. It will automatically have all the software on it.
Yeah.
But
And one of the things we've been trying to do is to get to one-to-one devices in all of our buildings, not just ACES. So we've been buying Chromebooks all along since I've arrived here, but right now, if we don't find a way to fill this void, we're gonna go backwards. And so, Ed has recommended that we need to get 574 Chromebooks to stay on track with our goal.
Mitch?
What happens to the earlier edition Chromebooks once we get the new Chromebooks?
They will be mostly obsolete because we will no longer have the programs to support them. What we can do is go in and put some on, but remember, we've got to pay for each of those licenses if we put it on, and that cost factor is quite low.
So are those, can they be used at all in the schools, or can they be sold at a fraction of the cost, either back to the company or to people in the community?
I'll be honest with you, we haven't gotten that far yet, but I can ask Ed at the next meeting to give you some overview on that.
Thank you.
Yep.
Chuck?
What about, in terms of the schedule of the purchase of these, is Royalston Community School included in this original purchase?
It is not, for the simple reason that until we get high-speed internet, we're having a hard time running the computers we have there now based on the system we have. And so Royalston will become the priority as soon as we get high-speed internet in the building, because right now, just to do NWEA testing, we literally have to set down every other computer in the building. There isn't enough internet service going into that building right now for more, and so that is our priority. Ed is working on something for that, separate from the town's plan. That may work, but we don't want to say anything until we have a contract in our hands. But I'm going to say hope is alive.
Can you put me on the list? Please?
Lynn, go ahead.
Okay, in fiscal '21, we want to add science curriculum, and also adding second grade teacher at ACES to be enrollments, as we saw in the class sizes.
So let me speak to the science curriculum, because you're probably wondering, we just spent a lot of money on science curriculum. The dilemma or problem has been that we didn't necessarily do individual student labs before, so we weren't purchasing things like worms and mice and all of that. And so now, in order to have a true science curriculum, you have to buy those disposable things every year.
Our last meeting was canceled due to a conflict with the ATA, so our next meeting is not until January 13th.
Okay. Academic excellence.
Academic excellence met this morning, and we had an overview of the strategic plan update that was passed out earlier to everyone.
Okay. Public relations.
Public relations, minutes from 2 days ago, our last speaker being passed around at this point, it should be almost.
We're almost there.
Almost all the way through.
Take one and pass.
The public relations meeting focused on response to concerns about school climate, specifically bullying. And we received a report from the superintendent about actions that have been taken to address the issues of bullying and social emotional learning, including school assemblies, which were mentioned previously at this meeting. An association connected with Sandy Hook School is going to be coming 3 times to present a program on how to encourage students to notice and interact with their isolated classmates. We are also, the superintendent and the administrators are also conducting walkthroughs at every school to talk to students about their experiences, about their sense of the climate in their schools. And the committee recommended that we develop a report form for incidents of bullying, so parents know exactly who to talk to, what information to give. The consensus of the committee was that the best way to help parents use this form, if necessary, was to make the school administrator the person of first contact and have that send out copies of the form to every parent, which are going to be lost and thrown out and never looked at. When they're needed, won't be there when they're needed.
Carla, do you mind if I intercede on
Oh, of
that?
course.
We do have the forms. That was not the issue. It is actually online. A parent can go online
Oh, okay.
and actually pull the forms up and get them. So it was more of how do we get parents informed about the actual forms and where to find them so that they can fill them out, and then who they give them to.
Yeah, but the suggestion was to make the administrator, the school administrator, the first contact.
That would normally be the procedure under our documents. It's just a matter of how do we get parents more informed about them so they know where to get them and how to fill them out. That's okay.
Wasn't taking notes quickly. that's
Yeah,
okay.
no problem.
And review the newsletter, and it will be going to Mr. Donning. Hopefully, for inclusion in the Athol Day.
Thank you. Policy sub.
Yes, we have several policies. The first, presenting for first reading, IHB EA, English Learner Education, and policy JFABE, Educational Opportunities for Military Children.
Is there a motion? First reading.
I make a motion to accept and presented.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Okay, we present for second reading, GBGB, Staff, Personal Security and Safety, GCBA, Professional Staff Salary Schedules, RB, Academic Freedom, ICA, School Year, School Calendar, ID, School Day, IHAI, Occupational Education, IHAM, Health Education, IHR, Special Instructional Programs and Accommodations.
Is there a motion?
I make a motion to accept them.
Motion made and seconded.
I
Any
just-
discussion?
Sorry.
Okay, I think,
I had the same question, I think you did.
Yes.
Yeah.
IHB, you said R.
I had a question on ID, the first sentence,
It's not complete.
it's not complete. The length of the school day is established in collective bargaining agreements with, and then it goes on to another paragraph.
okay, I didn't catch that.
Which one was that again, Ken?
ID.
ID.
The first sentence isn't complete, it just ends with, but it doesn't go on
I
to complete the
assume
thought.
it means with the teacher union and school committee.
Okay, if you'd like, we will admit,
Yeah, I think it would be the collective bargaining agreement with
Cheryl, do you know what the
teachers'
wording would-
bargaining unit.
I don't know, I just copied and pasted, so I have to look it up.
okay. Well, why don't we omit this one and bring it back next time?
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
That's less.
Les, yes.
Yes.
Yep. Go ahead, Deb.
Okay, third reading, DBF, Grant Compliance Policy.
Is there a motion?
I make a motion to accept it as presented.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Okay. I certainly hope everybody here is hearing a duck, and it's just not me. Okay, thanks. Committee member.
Nobody cares about
Hey, anything's possible. Committee member referral, starting with Chuck.
I have none.
Jeff? Ken? Nance?
No, this is not.
Chip? John? Mitch?
Two quick things. One is, directed to Mr. Vine. Basically, as the Athol Daily News continues to go through changes, I just wanted to say that we appreciate your attendance here and your reporting on the events that occur, and to the extent that you can do that in as professional and thorough manner in the path. We appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
And secondly, a note on policy. There was a policy on our responsibilities for military families in here. And next time around, we have a policy coming up in regard to our responsibilities for homeless families and our responsibilities for foster families. And I find in going to the policy committee meetings that there's a lot of material in there that I'm surprised to find out in terms of our responsibilities. And oftentimes later on it comes up in school committee meetings and we say, well, why do we have to do this and why do we have to do that? And I guess my comment is I'm sure that everyone familiarizes themselves with these policies as they come up. But they do bear really careful reading to try to understand what our responsibilities are in these areas, because it seems like the state is consistently coming up with more responsibilities for the school system. And these are all, I know that Deb and the committee, led by Deb, works really hard on updating these policies on a very regular basis. We consistently look at what the state policy is or what the MASC policy is, and we try, with the advice of our council, to come up with fair and updated policies all the time. So it behooves us to pay really careful attention to them.
Carl.
Yeah, just add something to Mitch's explanation here. We are, as a policy subcommittee, slowly working our way through the policy book. And by the size of the packet of policies you have in this and every other school committee packet, you can see how many policies we have to deal with. What we do is compare the policy with the most recent MASC policy and see where ours need to be changed and adopt the MASC policy with or without edits. It's a long, slow process. We're going through it systematically. A to whatever the end of the alphabet is. And things don't change overnight, which is why we have policies that are out of date.
Carla, did you have any referrals to that?
No.
Okay. At this point, I would. Okay, thank you. Second. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Hine.